watching it?
Yep, they'll be joining. There'll be a few other people joining. Now, there's two different ways you can do it. You could be on speaker view, which is, you'll be able to see my screen the majority of the time, or whatever screens that we choose. And the other one is gallery view, where you'll be able to see everyone's little boxes with pictures of them.
Okay. I see him down here.
You see him, but he's not seeing you.
Here.
There you are.
I see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to get started in just a minute.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take your fluid?
Yes.
I didn't take my med yet, but I will. Do you make your own vegetable stock?
We do.
Yeah, I put a bunch of stuff in mine that usually looks like mushrooms.
Well, so we don't put mushrooms in this one. This has carrots, celery, onions, garlic, bell peppers. What else is in here? I gotta think for a second.
No.
What's that?
It would be good to know how to make your own vegetable stock.
Yeah, and there's tons of recipes you can find online too for it. It's super easy.
Yeah.
But making vegetable stock is great.
Okay. And the beans, do you soak your own beans? And
Yep. So we use dry beans and we boil them, but you can use canned beans as well, and we'll go over that when we start the class.
Okay.
You can use either one.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Joan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Should we get started?
Sure.
You mind if I?
Oh, look. Oh, my God.
Look at that. We got a full chef going over there.
He's dressed up as a
I
chef.
love it. I should have worn the same thing.
Yeah, a hat and I've got it.
Nobody's got the coat and everything.
It's fantastic. When you're done, come over here. We got more work for you to do.
All right.
Okay, good. We have
All right. Hi, Kathleen. So, guys, Kathleen's an overachiever. She went ahead and chopped all her vegetables.
Oh,
So many.
First, then we'll.
Otherwise,
All
I'd
right.
be standing here at 7 o'clock and still chopping, and nothing would be made.
you
Okay.
need to. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna go over what we
I
have
ordered
first.
a bunch of meal kits, so
Yeah,
that's
she got 4 of them, so that's
I
why.
got a lot. A lot.
So we should all have the same things in our meal kits: vegetable stock, cooked beans, tomato paste, tomatoes and pulp, carrot, celery, onion, and ham. Now, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get this all cut up, and we want to cut our vegetables to be close to the size of the beans, so that when we're eating it, it all kind of mixes nicely. You don't need to go this small because these beans are kind of small. So you want a little bit chunkier, but let's go ahead and get them all diced up. The first is the celery. And honestly, the easiest way to do it is just to hold the wobbly side on like this and run a knife down the middle. And then we just cut it up. And for these bigger pieces, you just make 3 strips instead of 2 strips and do the exact same thing. We're gonna cut our onion up. So first thing we're gonna do is fingers up, cut it right in the middle, about 3/4 of the way through, and then tuck your fingers and go straight down. And then you turn it, you have your dice, just naturally happens.
Yep.
And then for our carrot, these carrots are kind of big, so you don't have to use the whole thing if you don't want to. I'm a big fan of a lot of vegetables in my soup, so I would probably use the whole thing, but the recipe here uses about 1/2 to 3/4 of this carrot.
Where did you get such giant carrots?
It's from our produce vendor. We get some beautiful stuff, and we're very fortunate to have some great vendors we work with.
Are we gonna put all of these vegetables in at the same time?
Yes, we are. You can go ahead and mix them.
Okay.
Ah,
Button aside so you get-
Man, that onion's making me cry a little bit.
need more water.
And then last thing I'm going to do is we're going to dice the ham the same size, but we're not going to mix this with the vegetables because we're going to add this at a different step. Now for the ham, this is how much we put in ours. Now it's a matter of whether you like a meatier soup or not. I like a lot of ham in mine, but some people prefer to just use some of it and then the rest you save and you make an omelet in the morning or anything like that. But basically you just cut strips and then cut the opposite direction and you have a nice diced ham. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So looking at our ingredients, we have chopped tomatoes and pulp. So your recipe says tomatoes and puree. This is, you combine those two quantities and that's what you have here. Right out of the can, you find a nice San Marzano style, so it doesn't have a lot of acidity. Vegetable stock, which we make. Now, you can use water, you can use chicken stock, you can use vegetable stock. I love a good vegetable stock because it adds a lot of elements to it, a lot of flavors. And we're putting more vegetables in. So we're taking this vegetable stock and we're doing what's called fortifying it. So we're gonna make the flavor stronger by adding more vegetables, the tomatoes, the ham. So it's really gonna give this rich feel. The tomato paste is where our thickness comes from in the soup, along with the starch from the beans. Now, at the club, we use fresh beans. So we use, dry beans. So we take the dry beans and we boil them for about 45 minutes to an hour until they're nice and tender. But you can use canned beans. You just want to drain all that excess liquid out. You don't even have to wash them because you want that starch. It's going to help thicken up the soup. But this is the way we do it at the club. So let's slide this all over and get over to the pot here. I got to get you a better angle. Let's see. I come in.
Order one of those.
There we go. Now you can see right on in. So when I do this, you're starting your vegetables over a medium to medium low heat. And this is kind of the secret to making a great soup or any kind of thing where you're cooking vegetables for a long time. Because what we're going to do is you add a touch of oil to the bottom of the pan. I use olive oil. And then you want to add your vegetables and let them slowly, slowly cook. And that's going to take all the natural sugars in the vegetables and allow them to develop into this sweet flavor. And you lose that burn and spiciness from the onion. You lose, that light bitterness that the celery might have. And it just turns into just a sweet mixture of just delicious vegetables. So this is kind of step one. Now there's a step in this process I do that a lot of people don't. And what that is once these start to sweat, I'm going to actually add some salt to it. So you don't salt in the beginning because if you put the salt now, you're going to pull more water out of your vegetables and they're going to steam before they can caramelize. And we don't want to do that. We want to let some of this steam and stuff kind of cook off so the sugars start reacting. Then we add some salt and that's going to allow it to pull a little more moisture out and really maximize just how the flavor that we're getting from these vegetables. So
Is your oil supposed to be hot before you put it in your vegetables?
it doesn't have to be for this because we're not trying to get a hard sear. We're trying to just slowly cook.
So
Kelsey, can
just
you
dump
allow
them
that
in
person?
there.
You just dump them in.
Okay.
And now we're just going to let this go. So what's going to happen is as our vegetables are cooking, they're starting to get coated in the fat from the oil. They're starting to soften up. You can see the onions are starting to get a little bit see-through and glassy. That's what we want. And when that happens first, it means that they're not raw anymore, which is a good thing. And then they're going to continue to soften and continue to sweeten up. And that's the strong base to a great chicken soup, a great soup of any kind that has vegetables. And this will take some time. Sometimes if you do this over a lower temperature, sometimes it could take a good, 10 minutes for your vegetables to really properly develop those flavors.
like a good.
So if you can see my veggies, I'll lift them up for you. You can see they're getting a little glassy and shiny, and that's what we want. That means that they're starting to react. They're starting to pull water out. If I look at the bottom of the pan, I could see that there's water in there. It's the natural water from inside the vegetable. Celery and onions have a lot of water to them. Whereas carrots are a root vegetable, they're not as heavily water-based. So at this point now, because I'm not necessarily worried about my carrots getting soft, but I am worried about my onions, that raw flavor being cooked out. So I'll give it a smell. I'll take my hand and wave some of the aromas towards me. That's going to keep me from putting my face like right here in the pot. And it's going to pull that smell, and I'll be able to smell it. If it's burning up here in my nose, well, then that means that the onions are still a little raw, and I don't want to do this yet. I mean, you will have a cooked onion flavor, but it's not going to have that sweetness. So you want to make sure that raw onion burn is out of your nose. So when you smell it and you get in there real close and get a good whiff, you shouldn't have any reaction in your sinuses. It should just smell like sweetness. So at this point, we're going to add the ham. So the ham, now remember, ham has salt. Ham is pork that has been salt cured and brined and then smoked. So it has a lot of salt to it as well. So we're not going to add salt until the very end. I salted the vegetables, but not any more of the soup until this is done cooking. And I want to
So
let
you
this
have to take the skin off?
You don't have to take the skin off. No.
No?
Nope. You could. That skin is just a so word I'm looking for. It's just a skin that forms from the smoking process. So it'll be a little smokier if you leave the skin on, but by all means, you can take it off too.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, I'll tell you about it later. I just found out. Bye-bye.
So what I'm looking for here is for the ham to soften. And this is when it's going to start smelling really good, because all that ham flavor, all that porkiness, all that smoke is going to start, all those aromas are going to start coming out. And the ham and the vegetables kind of make one just beautiful mixture. This is awesome. If you stop just at this point and you cook it a touch more and you add, say, I don't know, boiled rice to it, you got an awesome side dish. So just ham and vegetables and rice. But if I were to make any other soup, if I were making a beef barley soup, I would start like this instead of ham put beef. If I was making, a minestrone soup, I would add the broth, not the ham. Sometimes you have prosciutto, and you let it continue to cook. So this first step of the carrot, celery, and onions, which is called the mirepoix, that's the base for making sure that you have the good foundation to make this soup. So now that my ham has kind of started to release more moisture, what's going to happen is those little chunks of ham, as they start to cook out some of the liquid, they're gonna so word I'm looking for. They're gonna become stronger in flavor, and that's what we want too. We want that ham to have a strong ham pop to it. So when you get a chunk in your stew, it doesn't just taste like mush like everything else. It actually stands out as a piece of ham. So I'm gonna let this keep cooking for a second and really, really strengthen the flavor and smell of that ham. And this is starting to smell amazing.
Chef,
Yes, ma'am.
should the carrots be soft before we add the ham?
No, they don't. No, because the carrots, doing carrots like this, it could take a good 20, 25 minutes sometimes for them to get soft based on how strong your flame is.
Right.
But we're going to add the broth, and then that's going to simmer. So that's going to continue to cook and soften the carrots.
Okay.
So there's plenty of time for those to get soft. And the fact that they're small, they'll be perfect consistency when we're done. Perfect texture.
Okay. I have a lot of carrots in there. Okay.
Yeah, your process, because you have so many carrots, is going to take a touch longer.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. All right. Thanks.
So now what I'm seeing is the bottom of my pan is kind of dry, which is great. That means that a lot of this natural waters and moistures inside here have disappeared. That means that right now all that's happening is flavors are fortifying. Flavors are getting stronger. So I'm going to add my tomato product, both the paste and the chopped tomatoes. And now I want to cook these a little because I don't want a raw tomato product in here. I don't want that raw tomato acidity. I want to know that it's got a sweetness from the tomatoes and just a great tomato flavor. So I'm going to cook this for a few minutes and let that kind of roll out. Now,
The
with
raw
tom-
tomato.
what's that?
That's okay. I'll say it another time.
Now with canned tomatoes, depending on the quality you buy, makes a big difference on how long you cook them. So if you buy a San Marzano tomato, it takes less time to cook because it has less acidity. Most canned tomatoes have citric acid, but some are packed in pulp, some are packed in water. So you want to look at what kind you're buying. We like the ones that are packed in pulp, and we like San Marzano style because in 10, 15 minutes, that acidity is gone. And they're just beautiful and delicious. And people put sugar in sauces to counter acidity when they have cheap tomatoes. But if you buy good tomatoes, you don't need to.
Yeah.
So what's happening here now, you can see it's starting to toast up nicely. It's getting really thick, which is great. Again, we're just continuing to cook our tomatoes. So we're going to add the vegetable stock. And at this point, I'm going to turn the heat up. And I want to bring this to a boil. I'm on a little burner, so it might take a touch longer to get to a boil.
What is this at the bottom of the stock?
That's just sediment from the vegetables. That's all it is.
It's just,
That's,
it's
you
a
know, if you look
vegetable
at it,
stock.
yeah, it's a vegetable stock. So we simmer the vegetables in water, and then we blend it, and then we strain it. But we don't strain it with like a cheesecloth or a coffee filter because we want that little bit of sediment. You know, you could tap that and add it right in there. It's going to add a lot of flavor and a lot of
Yeah,
elements
can I
to your
rinse
soup.
it?
Yep, you can rinse it. So bringing this to a boil before we add the beans is what's going to help us keep our soup from burning. What you want
This
to
is
do,
to be boiled now?
you want to bring it to a boil. And the reason is we want to bring it to a boil to free up any little sediment that's at the bottom from the tomatoes, but also to get the broth moving, because when we add the beans are heavy. So if we add them to a dead pot, meaning no boil, they're going to fall to the bottom and all the starches are going to settle there. And as it comes to a boil, they're going to stick and it's going to burn at the bottom. So you want this to be boiling first and set yourself up with a good base before we put the heavy starch in.
I do not.
And you know, here's a little chef's tip. If you sit there and just stare at the pot, it'll boil faster. A lot of people don't know that.
And we always learn the boiled pot and watched pot never boils.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
I don't know.
So when this hits a boil, what's going to happen is our veggies are going to, even now, I mean, our veggies are continuing to soften and cook. But the real beauty is happening because all those flavors, all that onion, all that carrot, all that celery, it's all fusing together and marrying right now. And that's what gives us just that really amazing undertone. And then the smoke from the ham and the porkiness just kind of takes it over the top. One little tip with soups is soups are always better the next day. I don't care what kind you're making. If you make a soup and you cool it down and tomorrow you reheat it, it's going to taste 100 times better. And that's for the same reason of what we're doing now. The flavors have time to marry. They have time to meld and come together. And normally when I do a soup, I do it the day before for that exact reason. A minestrone the next day is 100 times better than a fresh one.
Would a ham hock be better in this?
A ham hock would be delicious in this because it's got so much more smoke. I mean, it's so aggressive and great. We use just regular ham, but ham hocks, I love them. And then you have the meat kind of shredding as well. Even if you have a ham bone. You use a ham bone in here. Say you do a ham for the holidays. Well, then you make this with a ham bone and you let this cook for a little longer before you add the beans till the meat falls off the bone. And then you throw the beans in there and you'll have a great soup. Just absolute same principle as split pea soup.
Yeah, okay.
So now I'm at a boil and I'm going to add my beans in.
Oh, mine's not boiling.
And the key at this point is to drop it down to a simmer once it comes back to a boil. So I want to keep this moving with the beans I just put in, and then I'm going to let it come down to a simmer. And what's going to happen is, as this simmers, the beans are going to release starch, and they're going to absorb some of this liquid, and it's going to, again, continue to marry and just make this beautiful mixture. But once it hits a boil, we drop it down nice and low, and we just stir it occasionally. Now, some things that may happen based on the size of your pan, based on how long you're cooking it for, if you cook your own beans, how long you pre-cooked them for, you may need to add some water to thin it out. And that's not uncommon. You know, beans absorb a lot. They absorb a lot of salt. They absorb a lot of water. So if your soup looks really thick, don't stress. You add a little bit of water and you should be perfect. So we're going to let this come up. So are you guys gonna stop coming to the club now that you know how to make the soup?
No, I think I'm gonna let you make it. I think yours is gonna be a lot better.
The guys do a great job. I'll tell you, Rafa, the gentleman who makes the soups here, he's been making them for, I don't even know how long. I want to say 12 years. I mean, he does a phenomenal job with the soups every day. He's the one who makes the soups every day for the carvery.
Well, that's what that's why I always, when I work out on Thursdays, I have my soup.
Yeah.
And when I placed my market order, I thought I was buying it ready-made.
Oh, we have that as well. You bought the meal kit instead, so we're making you do the work. We do have it ready-made for you as well by the quart.
Yeah, I saw that, and then I saw Thursday, and I thought, oh, well, maybe it's a special for Thursday like they usually do.
We didn't want to limit you while you're out, so we wanted to make sure you had as much navy bean soup whenever you wanted it.
Okay, so I won't run out then.
You won't run out.
I would much rather come and get yours than mine.
I'm sure yours is going to be better than mine.
Nope.
So at this point now, we're just letting this simmer. We're letting it cook. And, you know, I just want it to kind of do what it's going to do. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a good 20 minutes of just light cooking to make sure that it's exactly where I want it. And at this point, it kind of just becomes yours. It becomes to what point you think you want it to be done. Some people like soup thicker. I love a hearty soup. Some people like it brothier like this. So you can adjust and make this recipe your own. But this is how we make it here at the club for the navy bean soup.
Okay.
So
you use dry beans, not canned beans?
We use dry beans, but you absolutely can use canned beans. You just have to rinse them off. Or I mean, you just have to drain that liquid out. But canned beans work just the same. The only difference, the reason we use dry is we can control the salt level.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes canned beans can be a little salty. So we do dry, and it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to boil them to the texture that we want them. And we just boil them in water.
Okay, so my soup is not boiling yet, so I'm not going to put my beans in there.
Let it come to a boil first. Now, this is the most important step in the process is right now, because we're letting this cook, and you just want to occasionally stir it. You want your vegetables to soften. You want everything to come together. And again, if you eat it now, like at the end of this process, it's going to be delicious. But if you eat it tomorrow, it's going to be 100 times better. And if you reheat it tomorrow, you might just need to add a little water because the beans absorb. But that's it.
But then how long should you cook it? Is it just up to the individual taste?
It's up to the taste. It's up to also how big you cut your vegetables. It's up to the strength of your stove. So normally I'll simmer this for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, it's with 20 minutes with the beans in it. After 20 minutes, it's done. And you pull it off and you're ready to go.
Okay.
So if you want your veggies softer, then simmer it for longer before you put your beans in.
Yeah.
But the veggies should be pretty soft, and the ham should be fall apart by the time this is done because the size it was cut and everything. Are there any other?
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to ask if there's any other questions, so please go ahead.
Of course, you know me, I always have a ton of questions. Okay, since you have ham in stock, would it be possible to put ham on the list of, like you have the pastrami and the turkey and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're only bringing in ham to make the navy bean soup, so we don't bring a lot in. But if you want it, just put it in the comments in a request, and I'll happily get it for you.
I was just thinking that, and also rye bread.
Right, I'm working on rye bread. I'm going to add that on, not this coming week, but the following.
Great.
So so this week coming up, we have a ton of really awesome things coming out. So look out for the E-line. One big one is liquid hand sanitizer, which I'm very excited about. Disinfectant spray, bleach. So we want to make sure we get you the things that we can. Gloves. We got plenty of gloves coming out as well. So we want to make sure that we're trying to do our best. And on top of that, a whole bunch of new food items too.
Great. The other thing is, have you ever thought about bringing back Scotch lamb broth?
We do it. We do it some days.
I would love to learn how to make that.
Yeah, Rafa's made it. I got here in November, and Rafa's made it, I want to say, probably 8 times since I've been here. And it
Okay.
sells like crazy. People love it.
Love it. And
Yeah.
I have some ground lamb.
Yeah.
Do you ever use an immersion blender on the soup to thicken it up a little bit?
Absolutely. So you can do that. So now what you can do is, if you really want, add half your beans, let it cook for a little, blend it, and then add the other half of your beans. And now you have 2 textures as well. You have that thick bean soup, but then you also have whole beans in there.
Almost like a pasta fagioli.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I do, like, when I make a minestrone, I do beans in there and then I blend it as the thickener. So I use beans to actually to thicken my minestrone. And then I still have the other beans in there and the vegetables and everything. So I love that.
Good. We learned so much from you.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
What are you
Any-
gonna, what are you gonna have for the recipes next week?
Next week, I just sent that out to communications. Let me think here for a second. I'm gonna stand up because my knees don't work very well. So let's see. So Monday we have, I'm gonna pull it up because I
Okay.
literally just sent it. Monday we're doing a risotto class, the shrimp and
Oh,
tomato
I'm gonna do-
risotto.
Oh, I'd like to watch that.
And then Tuesday for Taco Tuesday, we're making chiles rellenos. For Wednesday, we're doing breakfast. We're doing corned beef hash and poached eggs. So I'm going to show you
Okay.
how to make corned beef hash and how to poach eggs. Thursday is, hold on, bear with me. Thursday's filet medallions Oscar style. So we're going to do smaller fillets. I'll show you how to make steak Oscar at home. And we'll make a sauce with that as well. And then Friday, we're going to make a shrimp gumbo. So,
Oh,
yeah, tons of fun. New Orleans style shrimp gumbo.
so if you do more than one day, can you pick it all up, for example, on Monday, or do you have to come back and pick it up on the day you're cooking it?
It depends on the kit and on the day. So like something like the shrimp gumbo, I don't want to give you shrimp on Monday
you
that
got-
we're going to cook on Friday.
No.
You know, so that's where it gets a little difficult. Now, we're not doing pickups on Tuesdays. So if you want Tuesday's kit, you can pick that up on Monday though.
Okay,
So that's great. So if you want to make Taco Tuesday, the chiles rellenos, come pick it up on Monday. We'll have it ready.
okay, good. These
All
are
right?
really, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you guys look real quick before we get off, you could see my keyboard. Just kidding. You can see the soup starting to thicken. And
Yeah.
you start to see the starch kind of come out. So your soup gets this glossy kind of look to it. And it's beautiful. And the types of bubbles change. They move a little slower. They get a little bigger. That means your soup's thickening up nicely. So that's what we want. So any other questions on the navy bean soup or on anything else?
No.
No?
Thank you very much, Chef.
Thanks, guys. Have fun. Be safe.
Thank you.
too.
Bye.
Eat.
Grazie.